I'm sure you guys can see this now, is, what I talked about earlier is what CNC Cookbook did of the, he did a graph of showing a survey last year of, what people are using out there of CAM. And you can see we went from 2014 to 2015 with just HSM Works from number 7 to now number 2 out there behind Mastercam. And then you can see with Fusion specifically where it got categorized, which it shouldn't be categorized with just those CAM packages because we are the same HSM Works technology. It leads number 1 for entrepreneurs, hobbyists, hardware startups because of the price standpoint and the functionality. So at least wanted to point that out. This is the money shot screen that you guys were probably looking for that people were like, I can't see it. So here it is. Take a picture. Forms are really important. If you have any questions for more seats of Fusion, email our Fusion sales team right there, as well as, I talk about customers. This is my fantastic customer slide of, if you want to be on our website, let me know. If you, hashtag Fusion360 on any Instagram post or Twitter post, and that always gets filtered out, and we love to see that all that great stuff. Today's goals we talked about had all these pretty slides for you. You can see that we're going to talk about a plethora of different things here. So compare, edit, expressions, engraving, patterns, and all that. And you guys know about questions. And there's a beautiful Autodesk logo. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump in. Hopefully you guys now see what I have, and cool. Glad you guys see it. Thanks for being cool, guys. So Project Leopard, one question that came up was, definitely do a Google search. It's called Project Leopard Beta. It's supposed to be the web browser of Fusion 360. And I don't have a specific link to that, unfortunately, but it is out there. It's in beta. Give it a try, run it through everything, and try some things out. It's beta, so keep that in mind, but at least you guys know where we're going in itself. So with that, hopefully there aren't any questions, and let's go and learn something right now. So the first example I want to show you is the Chamfer tool. And really quick, sorry again, is our YouTube channel, right? If you YouTube us, we actually have a playlist called Tutorials, CAM, and 3D Printing. And in here, you'll see a lot of the models I'm using today, most of them. But we got I've created a lot, even as well as my colleagues, up to 33 different quick tip videos on engrave and trace, how to apply assembly joints to vices and all that kind of great stuff. So please visit our YouTube channel. And I think this will be of value to you guys at the end of the day when you are trying to, look for more content out there to get up to speed. So hopefully that is helpful to you guys too. All right, so first one is the Chamfer tool. This came out recently, and what you guys are going to see is about every 3 weeks, we're going to be feeding you guys some new enhancements. So every time you do a quick little update, you're going to get something new. And what came out back in December was, under 2D, drop down, go to 2D Chamfer, we have this function for deburring, right? Because when you do a 2D contour, when I show you, you're going to see collisions that are going to happen when you pick up edges with the tool or a tool holder or something like that. So at least you guys will see what's going to go on here, why you want to use the 2D Chamfer tool. I'm just going to go back and forth between the questions, guys, just to make sure if I mess up again and I hit stop showing my screen or something. So make sure everything is okay here. All right. So let me show you a little trick, right? I don't want to go through and program this whole part. I just want to apply show you the 2D chamfer operation. So instead of like doing an adaptive clearing and pocketing and facing, check this out. What I like to do is if I just go to setup, and right there is going to give me my stock by default all the way around. I think we all know by now that if I hit the stem of the arrow and click a face, it's going to make it normal to that face. If I click the head of the arrow, it flips the direction of the arrow, of course. Then I can even access box point and put it at a location. But all this doesn't matter because I'm not going to rough it out. I want to start with actually that solid I have on the screen and then deburr it. So what's kind of cool here is, one, you notice that my stock side for relative size is 0, 0, 0. By default, when you install Fusion, you probably have, I think it's like 40 thou or 400 thou. But if you right click, you can actually change that and say, I want to now make 1 inch always my default. I can right click and say make default. So every time I go into stock, it's going to say this is going to be always the stock default relative size. Personally, I just set mine to 0, just so I don't have to figure out, trying all the little numbers. I like to set it and then add my stock as I go through. So right clicking gives you defaults. Okay, so I think it's reset to built-in as well as make a default. So if you screw up and you forget, just reset back to the built-in install. Really, really useful tip there. So under stock, instead of relative size, I'm actually going to say from solid, and I'm going to pick actually the part as my stock, because I'm going to say I've already machined everything, right, down to this piece, and then I'm going to add the deburring part to it. So if I'm going to say okay, you can see now I have just that stock right there. So first thing is, if I actually now do under 2D contour, I'm gonna go ahead and I have my library already set up. I have this, I got a chamfer end mill right here. Now for geometry, if I start going through and picking these edges, and I want to point this out to you guys, okay, as I dig through, I'm gonna pick this edge, so I don't want anybody to cut their part, probably deburr, like, oops, let's not do that one. Let's actually do this. Let's do maybe that one, and let's do that and that. Let's rotate this guy around so we can kind of get a really good feel of what we want here. I don't want that one, that one looks good. And let's get that edge. But now if you notice, see how it's looping all the way around? If I click on it, it gives me the select contours right here. See this little kind of mini toolbar? This is improving. We're going to make it more like the Inventor HSM part. But what I can do is, say, well, what don't I want, right? I don't want this, so I can say, let me throw that away, or even come around and just pick up a specific edge and say, that's maybe the only one I want there, not that one right there, and say, okay, and now I'm only getting that specific edge. So that's kind of a great tip to kind of keep in mind here of how we're doing it here. Let me just snap that guy back in. Excuse me, sorry. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to say okay, and you can see it's going to go through and apply a 2D contour all the way around. Now if I right click, say edit, I can come down over here to passes, and you scroll down and you see chamfer here, right? So I can set the chamfer width to, let's say, 20 thou and say okay, and now you're going to see it kind of step down, and that's going to be my width. Let me go and take a look at any questions here just to make sure we are all good in the hood. All right, good. So let me show you this. So how can I actually physically see the chamfer being applied, right? Well, this is what I like to do. I will turn off the solid, and if I right click on the 2D contour, come here to simulate, I am now going to turn on stock, and I like to go to wallpaper just because it looks a little bit better. And what you'll see here is if I hit play right here, what do you guys notice? See how it's like colliding with the other features? Excuse me, I didn't get a sip of water. So what you're seeing here is it's colliding with all the features. And if I scrub down here at the very bottom, see how it's actually showing me the collision of the tool to the stock? Well, this is a problem, right? So now you're gonna have to go in there and change, probably do multiple 2D contours, adjust the lead in and lead out of each one. I mean, you can even see through here, right? Even this bottom edge right here, see how it's gonna like just dive right in to the side right here? That's not what we want. So what I can do is, if I go ahead and zoom out, I'm gonna cancel this out. I'm gonna turn back on the stock. So if you look at this guy, if I right click, excuse me, so if I right click on the 2D contour, come down to create derived operation, the nice thing about this is I can drop down to 2D milling, come down to now, instead of 2D contour, pick 2D chamfer. the beauty about doing, excuse me, excuse me. So the beauty about doing a derived operation is that you can take the existing tool, the existing selections, and apply it to now a new operation. So all I have to do is now say okay. Excuse me. So now all I have to do is say okay, and I applied and adhered all those strategies to a new operation out there. Now, what do you notice about the 2D contour was that, the 2D chamfer now is that if I go ahead and simulate it, and I go simulate, I'm going to hide the stock, come here to stock. What it's done now, it's avoided the collisions to where that tool will come into. So this is a great way to deburr your part rather than trying to figure out, do a 2D contour, change the lead ins, change the lead outs. It's a very, very efficient way to go through. So it works all on a constant Z axis. Let me point that out. If you want, you could always do the trace operation, which gives you more of a 3D capability and doing it. But this is just great to start with, and some new functionality we added for you guys that came over from HSM. I actually did a video on it a couple weeks back, so definitely look on our YouTube channel for that as well. All right, so hopefully that was of value to you guys. Let me go ahead and hop over to the next example I have here. This one's quick and easy. If you do a lot of, we don't do nesting yet, but if you do a lot of placement of the same part in different locations, as well as tombstone or making multiple parts, you have multiple vices, and you want to lay them all across, and instead of reapplying the same operation, you could do something called a component pattern. That's something we just added recently in the past release or two. And one thing I want to point out here now is if I already applied an adaptive clearance strategy right here to this one, I'm actually just going to go through and if I right click on adaptive, I'm going to use that same tool. So I can just say, well, let me just do a derived operation, go down to horizontal and use that same tool and apply a horizontal strategy all the way across. And what that does, it looks at all the flat faces and does a finishing pass across all the flat faces for me. So now what I can do is, well, I want it to be applied to the rest of these components I have. So what I can do is select both of the operations, come down over here to this guy called pattern, and then say, instead of doing a linear pattern, I'm going to do something called a component pattern. This is going to be my source, and now it's going to apply it to the rest of the patterns that you see here. So this is actually really efficient, right? So you can just apply all your tool paths to one. If I right click and edit on it, I can do order by tool, preserve order, order by operation to make it as efficient as possible. But then two, what's actually really slick about this, if I actually hop back over to model, let's just double click on this component. I'll do control C, control V, copy paste. I'll just move this guy out just to kind of show you what goes on here. Now if I hop back over to CAM, what you'll see here too now, it's automatically updated and applied it even to the other instances that I made a copy of. So hopefully this will be efficient when you have to add more components, if you have to create more parts, if you're doing multiple runs. This is a really, really efficient way just to start off with one and then just pattern this guy out. We do have the, for example, if I do a pattern again, let me go in and just get rid of this guy, and I'll move this guy right out, and we'll delete this guy. Let me just show you this off the cuff here. So if I did like a new pattern, I can do a linear pattern and say direction one. Let's say if I pick this direction here and then add an additional direction, let's pick this direction here. And if I pick, actually what I want to do is pick them first. So let's do this. Let's do a pattern. Let's do a linear pattern. This is going to be direction number one, and then this is going to be direction number two. What you can see here is what happens. Let's go 4 inches by 3 inches. Actually go by 7 inches like that. So with this way of doing it, like you do like a linear pattern, this is an example, right? If I do instances of, let's go 6 and 6, right? So all that is I'm saying, hey, don't copy the geometry, physical, just take that initial seed and now just do a linear pattern all the way across. Even though the part might not exist there, the physical part, I just want to replicate it all the way through, like on a sheet, a big old thick stock, piece of stock. So this is great for like maybe water jetting, and I got or plasma cutting. I had a couple guys use that too, this operation here. Or if you're just doing like super small parts on a big sheet or on a router, I mean, this works great, right? Something to kind of point out there. Hopefully that helps you guys out there too. Let me just dive back over here to the questions here. Great, glad you guys like that one. Let me go ahead and hop over now. So this is one that I've gotten before, and you know, I've shared this before, made some tweaks to it, but you know, Fusion is the beauty about Fusion is interoperability of working with multiple CAD files out there. So you know, right off the bat, when you import something, sometimes you might not know if it's a solid body or not. And one thing I always like to do is when I import the model, drop down under bodies, you can see that this is not a solid watertight body. I can actually open up here and you can see these are all like surfaces. So bad geometry. I need a watertight solid. So the beauty about Fusion is if I actually drop down the model and go to patch, we have a lot of great repair tools. And I can physically just go down to modify, stitch, and just drag a window across all these surfaces and say, okay, and now it's going to make it a watertight solid. All it is this right here is just, you know, a color. I need to change the color, right? But it's now a complete watertight solid just using some of our repair tools. Now, what's also pretty cool, if I hop down over here to patch and cam, one thing I want to point out to you is what happens if I want to just, let's go ahead and up and look at this guy here. So what happens if I just want to machine the inner portion or do a finishing strategy on this face right here, right? Because I've done an op one where I've gone through and I've roughed out everything around here, right on this backside. Then on this op on this backside, I face it, right? And then I got to do a finishing op here. I don't need to adaptive clear everything all the way around, right? I only want to machine just this face right here so you guys can see what I have selected, just that inside face, because it has like a little lip and a dip down. So this is kind of a cool trick. Is under cam, I'm just gonna make sure this operation is active. So if I ever click on one of these little guys, little dots, that now means that any new tool operation I add goes to that setup. I want it to go to the op2, right here. Of course, not my soft jaws one or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is just to machine that face, if I actually drop down to 2D, because it's a 2D pocket, I can do a 2D pocket. I'm going to pick a, let's go with a flat end mill, you know, like that. Let's go with this guy like that, something like this. Okay. Now for geometry, this is pretty slick. I'm going to pick this edge, outside edge, and see what this means is that it's going to machine everything that's blue, right? So it's not going to machine the inside of that circle. So it's going out to the size of the stock. Now, there is no stock there, right? Because I already faced that off, right? So what I'm going to do is pick now this one and that one, and it's ignoring just those centers, but if I do stock contours and check that on, it's set to the size of the stock. I want it to set to the size of the part, and now it's only going to machine just that specific area right there. So it's just a quick tip of if you want to do concentrated areas, think about the stock contours to designate the area you want to the containment boundary you want it to machine. And then two, you can go back in and select, now as you saw in this operation here, if I edit it, that, you know, if I go back to geometry, if I click the little arrow, it's now flipping the direction of each one. It's saying, well, now only machine the inside of that. Well, now if I flip it, it's only going to machine the outside and stay within this stock contour boundary. So hopefully that was of value to you guys. Let me just take a look at some of the questions really quick. Let's see here. So for the pattern example I did, yep. So let's say if you had the text, I guess the question is, if there was one thing different about the part, the text on it, for example, would the pattern functionality still be useful? Yeah, yeah. So pattern, whatever you do there, I mean, you'll see I'm gonna get into engraving next and doing text. Whatever you're gonna do there, though, is it's gonna replicate all the way through. So you can not pattern certain operations. You don't have to pattern everything that you want to do. So hopefully that answers your question there. So hopefully that helped out. Also, too, guys, if you guys are using CAM and you would like to share the type of machine you're using it on, please type it in. I'd love to know the type of machines you guys are running. I personally have a lot of desktop CNC machines, so I am purchasing a Shapeoko 3. If anybody has one of those, let me know if you like it or not, or you recommend anything different. I also have an Other Mill, a 3-axis desktop machine, as well as the new Pocket NC desktop 5-axis machine. So, I don't have room in my garage for a Haas mini mill, but I would love to have one. But at least we can do some testing of parts. If you guys ever want to see some prototyping done with some of the parts you're doing, I'd be more than happy. Send me the part. I could always scale it down and throw it on one of these prototype machines that I have and test it out. I do a lot of testing, and it's always good to see. I buy a lot of machinable wax. If you guys recommend anything better than machinable wax, I find it's just easy and clean and really not too messy. And so if you guys have any of the recommendations out there, please do let me know. But I love going to machinablewax.com to get that stuff, which is great. So just letting you know. Machinable wax, which is awesome. Someone got a mini mill, which is great. Someone got a Shapeoko 3, great. Good to know. If you got the DeWalt router for it, let me know if you have something different you recommend. A lot of people on here have a Tormach. Tormach is a huge partner of ours. So you'll see that we're going to be doing a Fusion 360 and Tormach, their new Tormach 440 that just came out. We're going to be doing classes with them strictly on using Fusion 360 as well as their Tormach machine programming, so design and fabrication. If you guys aren't familiar too with NYCNC on his YouTube channel, follow him. He's starting to do Fusion 360 classes out in Columbus, Ohio. 3-day training classes on Tormachs, I think 1100s and 440s, full in depth. I'm doing the one out in April. So if you guys, have any extra cash laying around and you want to get some extra training and do some networking, a lot of us will be out there in April. He has it every month. Not trying to make a pitch for him. I just think that if anyone's in that area and you want to learn a little bit more about CNC machining, I'll be out there. It'll be great to connect with you guys. All right, let's move forward again. We are about another 20 minutes left. So what I want to dive in again now is this like engraving part. And one thing I want to show you is that if you actually Google Fusion 360 App Store, so if you do this, let's do this. Fusion 360 App Store. Okay. And in here, there's this awesome, as it loads up, app called SoftJaw. It's really not SoftJaw. It should be more stock block creation. And it's a cool app that you can install. And if you always have trouble thinking about setup and so forth, it gets installed right here under the model create called SoftJaw creation. And it's this little kind of widget in here that I can say, okay, well, what's the jaw length I want for this little Tormach whistle? Let's say it's 5 inches. What's the width? It's 1 inch. And what's the height? It's going to be 2 inches. So that's going to be the size of my jaw, right? And then for the groove in the jaw, so my step, I'm creating step jaws, right? To hold my block, I'm going to go with 200 thou right here. And that's going to be a block, not a cylinder, right? I can do it as a cylinder if I want. Then what's my block width? Meaning my block or my stock. So if I do 3 inches by 4 inches by, I think it's about a little less than a 1 inch thick, then I say okay, it will automatically go through and create the stock for me, as well as my jaws. So this is a great way to use even this stuff in your simulation for interference detection, right? If the tool's going to collide with the stock or the jaw you have set up, instead of you modeling all the time and you just know those dimensions off the top of your head, just key them in and it will create all this for you. And you can see here it creates all the bodies, right? So I can even take these bodies, right click and say create components, call this top one, the Tormach whistle, right? Then this guy here, I think it's this last one here is my stock, right? So just, I can come here and change the opacity. The only way you can change the opacity if you create it as a component, something to keep in mind. But I can change the opacity, and you can see just how perfect this guy sits right within my part, right? So I can come in and face it, do a lot of operations, then flip it, and then machine the back side of it. Now, one little trick I did that I want to point out to you guys is, let me go ahead and just, if I click on the whistle, right click and say isolate, what I actually did is, how did it place it so perfectly, right? Well, one, and how to give me like that bottom clearance. So what I did is I actually set up a joint off the origin and gave it an offset of, I think, like a 1/4 of an inch, right? So that's why it has that offset. And what it does is it generates the stock based off the origin of the part. So you can see that the origin is at the center and it's offsetted from a plane, and that's how it fits oh so beautifully within this whole creation here. So it all comes back to design intent, right? I mean, in this case is I started from the origin. I knew that, the back side, when I machine it, I'm going to face the back side and all that. So I had it set up perfectly, but it's still an awesome app that you guys can install and go through. I think that can do it too. So let me just look at some of these questions. Someone's taking the NYCNC class this weekend. If you do, please email me. I'd love to know. I heard the first one he did was awesome. I see some other questions in regards to engraving, and we're going to get into engraving right now. I got Home Build Joe CNC. Love that. I got a Roland on here. X-Carve. Yeah, I got some good machines on here, guys. Got a Bridgeport. Nice. Sorry, I just want to make sure I get to some of these questions here. So with this said now, what we're going to do is, let me just hop over. I already have it all kind of set up right here. But what I'm going to do is let me just suppress this guy. Show you guys the difference between trace and engrave. Okay, and this is how, derived operation comes into play, because I don't want to unselect or reselect everything. But basically, I have my stock set up right here, okay? And I have the trace operation set up, and what I did is I went through and I just picked all the contours, right? I don't want to pick all of them for you because it's just wasting time, but of course under 2D and trace, this is where you can do it. The beauty about trace is that it adjusts a varying Z height, right? So you can go like an edge or curve, whatever, and it'll trace along it. So something to kind of keep in mind of where that comes into play. Engraving is a little bit different. Excuse me. So what you're going to see here is, if I right click, and let me go ahead and hide the geometry. If I right click, come here to simulate. Oh, sorry. Let me just generate toolpaths. If you guys haven't noticed yet, we added all these little shortcut keys now. So you want to duplicate something, it's Control D, Control G is generate toolpath automatically, or Command G on a Mac. But the cool thing about this guy is, let me go ahead and right click and do simulate. And what you'll see here, let me just turn on the stock, and I like to go to tail. And you can kind of see exactly kind of what happened here, right? It's just physically tracing along each edge that I selected. And it's not giving me, it's like giving me like the embossed look, right? Rather than debossing it and cutting it out, like how the Tormach logo really works. And this could be perfectly fine for what you want. Now, what the engrave tool does, just to kind of show you, again, is instead of me reselecting all those edges, I can just right click on trace, come here to create derived operation, 2D milling, go to engrave. It applies all the same thing, right? it takes all the geometry, it just takes the same tool, just applies it all to a new operation. Passes, linking, stay down, entry point, all that I can change now. So what this does is if I say okay, and we'll see what's going to happen here, let's go ahead and keep in part of these edges right here, right? Of how all this is going to look. If I go ahead and turn off the whistle, let's go ahead and simulate this guy, and I'm going to turn on the stock so we can see it. You can see exactly what's going on here, right? It's diving in, and it's going to adjust the Z height of the tool so the tip can fit in as close as possible if the full diameter can't get in there. So this is a great way to get more of that look, that debossed texturing text you're looking for, rather than just the basic trace of going around lines in itself. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys, but you can see the difference of the output of what we're getting here. I also did a video on there in regards to working with that. Hopefully that helps you guys out as well, and that's on our YouTube channel too. One thing too, the kind of a great tip is, if you guys don't know, what we added very similar to SolidWorks. If you hit the S key, you have this little shortcut key to where I can type in trace, and it will filter out any operation that has trace in it. And I can say add, or I can do engrave, and I can add it right in there just like that. So anytime I hit the S key, it will bring that up, and I can say, let me go to the engrave operation, and go like that. Instead of diving through all the different menus, and depending on which one you are in, I can hit the S key again, and it goes back to the model, simulation, T-spline functionality. All that is involved there as well. So I at least wanted to point that out too. Hopefully that is of value too. So let's continue forward. Leave a couple more minutes going forward, and I'll do another CAM webinar coming up to cover more tips. I know we're just, an hour is never enough time with the amount of stuff and the questions that do pop up. The other one I wanted to show you was this. This was an example of, what do you do when you want to just machine, there's a couple different ways to do this, right? I'm just showing you one way to do this is I need one big chamfer end mill, right? Because it's technically a chamfer. If I don't have that size, right, then I would probably do an adaptive clearing and like a 3D contour to go all the way down to get that finish that I'm looking for. But my problem here, though, is this edge right here, right? This is the problem, right, of how that's going to look. And if I actually went over to CAM, and I said, what, let me say, let me go through and do a adaptive clearing, and then I pick this geometry like that. See how this is not getting me what I want, right? I'm going to sit here, play this game of how it needs to look, and I'm not going to get just that outer edge. So one thing I like to do is I like to go through and defeature the part. So make two setups. And what I did here is, Fusion is, as I mentioned before, is a great tool for defeaturing. So I can import geometry, go back over to model, and say, if I don't want this guy, click on the face and hit delete, click on the circle and delete it. And now I can go through and just delete everything here, right? And it's going to now close it up and give me what I want, right? So I think you guys are getting the point of where I'm going at with this. Let me just undo it so you guys can see exactly what I'm going with this. So what I did is I created a defeatured one of just that. And when I come over here to CAM, what I did is I did a Control G, rebuild everything. What I did is I'm going to adaptive clear, okay, just these guys, all right, in this first setup, adaptive clear, just that out, and then come in and do my finishing contour to get that. But then how about the holes, right? So then what I did is then created a new setup here. And if I go back on and check that guy on and turn that defeature one off, I then applied now the drilling to each one there. So this is a great way to kind of hybrid between, two different setups. When you want to defeature one model, do it on one setup, and then come in and then do the second one, right? So something to kind of keep in mind as you go through this process. And even probably too, what you could do now is I think even when you post out the code, I think you could even take both of these operations and move it up here and get rid of that setup and have it as one setup. It just depends on what machining you're doing and where you want to go with it. Hopefully that is of helpful and value to you as well, guys. We are coming up on time. The last example I do want to show is this awesome pencil strategy. Is, one thing that when you have fillets or want to add fillets all throughout a model and interrogate, or you have a, let's say for example, you have a part that has all these rounds and fillets and you don't want to go and select everything and you want it to intelligently look at it. Well, let me show you something really quick. Is if I just drop down under 3D, go to pencil, and it basically is just going to trace around all these edges, and you don't have to select anything. So I'm just going to pick this guy here. Let's go and pick a ball end mill, of course, right? And let's go with this guy right here. I'm going to say OK. And it should follow around the outside edge, but it doesn't. Okay, it only does this super, super light one here. And why is that? Well, this is something very important, and I hope this helps you guys out. If you probably notice, the radius of the fillet is larger than the radius of that tool that I'm using. But I still, for example, maybe want that tool to be used for that fillet, right? And of course, there's going to be a smaller radius or a smaller fillet that's going to go all the way around it. So what I need to do under the pencil strategy is edit, come here to passes, and there's something called over thickness, right? So what I can do is I can add an over thickness here and say, okay, of 1/4 of an inch. And now we'll go through and look for those fillets and apply now and use that same tool to even the larger fillets that are there. So something to keep in mind when you are saying, hey, why isn't this smaller tool working for these larger fillets? You got to add an over thickness there so it recognizes like, hey, go ahead and just use this same tool for these larger fillets, and you're going to override it that way. So we just have a couple minutes left, guys. I know people are starting to jump off. Hopefully this was insightful. This will be posted again. My apologies about earlier in the webinar about not having the slides, but it looks like everybody saw everything we needed. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in right now. I'll take some questions as we go through. We will do another one of these coming up. If you want to see any requests on other topics, let me know. Take a look at the YouTube channel. Take a look at the, all of our just all of our resources that we have out there. There is plenty of information that you guys can leverage. If you are a customer already and you want to get some publicity, please contact me. I'd love to know what you guys are doing and how you guys are using CAM. It's only going to help you guys and your business and help us just to show that, A, we are supportive of the community of CAM. And then B, if there's some things that you guys want to see that needs to be improved with our CAM software, I hear it all day long. Let us know, email our team, put it on the forums because everybody sees it and it just drives more of an attendance that way. And then lastly too, it's what's coming up too is what we hear is about 5-axis and simultaneous fourth for those people that have Tormox and Sprue Cam. Simultaneous fourth is coming, this year. We hear it every day. Don't worry, I just heard it from some guy today. We do indexing today, but simultaneous fourth is in the books. And if you use Lathe, let me know. I'd love to know how you're using it. We're still growing that community of Lathe users out there. It's the same thing as HSM Works. And hopefully this was of benefit to you guys. Thank you guys again. Thank you for attending, and enjoy the rest of your week, guys.